Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our last session in the Student Employee Professional Development Speaker Series. This series is part of an expanded pilot program administered by the Office of Professional Education and Workforce Development at UTRGV to about 75 plus student employees from our division to introduce them to the benefits of gaining industry specific knowledge in technical skills related to their areas of studies and develop soft skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, professional communication skills, teamwork, and time management, etc. Through this intervention, they apply their newly developed skills to their jobs on campus through mentorship provided by their supervisors. These speaker sessions are designed to support their professional development through thought-provoking discussions on leveraging LinkedIn platform to build a strong network of professional connections. The University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, third largest in the the University of Texas system, is located in the Rio Grande Valley with distributed campuses and a student population of over 30,000. So for today's discussion, as you can see, we have four panel members that are going to be participating in today's discussion. And we're going to start off with Mr. Jake Hirsch Allen. I think I see him there, right there. Yeah. And, and then we also have Mr. Aaron Barrero, Mr. Cole Hayden, I'm sorry, and Ms. Mai Lai. So without any further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start with Mr. Jake Hirsch Allen and introduce him briefly before he gets on his presentation today. So Jake builds public-private partnerships between North America's governments, workforce development organizations, colleges, and universities, and LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Through this work, Jake supports and is learning to be an ally to groups such as newcomers and refugees, indigenous populations, the formerly incarcerated, and people with disabilities. Jake also serves as a director on the boards of the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity, Information and Communications Technology Council, and the Canadian Club. He founded Lighthouse Labs, Canada's foremost software development boot camp, and Hacking Health. A former intellectual property and international criminal lawyer, Jake was also the chair of the technology committee of the Global Education Platform, taught global health at McMaster University, and clerked at the Supreme Court of Israel. In his presentation, he will share lessons from his career for career development, workforce development, and the future of work and learning. Take it away, Jake.
Thank you so much, Adri. First, for the glowing introduction. Second, for having me. And finally, for setting me up with such an amazing panel. I've rarely started a presentation feeling as sort of combined with embarrassed and excited, honored and apologetic as I have this one. And I'll go through each of those reasons really quickly. I have been trying to schedule this for some time and somehow ended up booked with a Canadian minister. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, so I'm literally calling in from Canada. I ended up being booked with a minister to speak in about 40 minutes. So I'm going to jump off early, and I'm so grateful to Jaytree and the other panelists for messing around with things in terms of order so that I might have to, you'll literally just see me disappear and they'll continue without me. But I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for adapting and most importantly for having me. I also wanted to sort of both apologize for that lengthy introduction and maybe explain it a bit. And my slides, in fact, will probably be the means by which I explain how I've done things like clerk at the Supreme Court and then also now end up, working at LinkedIn, start a software development bootcamp and a health organization, and now focus primarily on education and workforce development. So I'll explain that in a second. But again, apologies for any chaos that might have sort of created. And finally, my title I find often off-putting even for myself. The joke is, the longer the title, the less important you are. And I've been lucky enough in my time at LinkedIn, as you can see now below me, to be able to make up my own titles a number of times. And so while my statements today will be on my own behalf, so not like the official word of LinkedIn, I'm not an official communicator or spokesperson for our company, but rather I do very much bring a lot of the past 7 years of learning from working with the company that probably is most identified with networking and career development on the planet to this conversation. And it really is a lens on workforce development and higher education that I'll be bringing to the conversation. So with that, and all those apologies underway, let's maybe kick off the actual presentation. Thank you. And as you heard, I've had a really varied career, and I think that's actually helpful in these conversations because it allows folks to understand that unlike for our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, probably for the first time in human history, our career paths are not going to be linear, and they're not going to be, or they're likely not going to be in one job. A much more significant percentage of the population, certainly that we're talking to today, will see themselves in multiple different roles and industries and almost have to reimagine themselves. And so the flexibility, the adaptability, even to some extent, the resilience and persistence that was necessary for me to take this broader idea of creating social impact and weave it through a career that started out in public international law, helping to prevent, for instance, the crimes that befell my parents during the Holocaust, try to prevent them from happening over and over again, because I was working in Rwanda and the former Yugoslavia and Cambodia on similar issues, and then to change gears from that to intellectual property law, a very different kind of law, but still, within that realm of justice and legal practice and human rights. But in this case, the human rights were coming from access to medicines instead of access to justice. And again, social impact was the frame. Again, I became a bit frustrated in my work because I wasn't seeing the results that I had hoped from this area. And in part, what I learned and sort of had to accept some hard advice in this respect, I learned I wasn't a very good lawyer, to be frank. Often we go into fields not because we necessarily are good at, we have the skills or are excited about the potential for learning the skills in a given field, but rather my dad was a lawyer. And lots of people go into law to sort of keep doors open. And I'm actually really happy with that aspect of the education, the aspect that taught me how to understand society and the world and the structures that structure our society. But rather, I didn't realize that I didn't have to be a lawyer after I went to law school. And I think that learning is really important for many folks coming from pretty well any field, whether it's engineering or healthcare or the new sectors like sustainable energy that are popping up. You can start in one area and progress to another, and often doing so, the intersection of different areas will actually help you. It will allow you to contribute more, to learn more, because it really is at the intersection of different disciplines or industries that most creativity, that most innovation occurs. So the long story short in terms of my career is I ended up figuring out that where I could have more impact than in law, whether it was access to medicines or international criminal law, was actually in technology, education, and workforce development at the intersection of employers, jobs, skills, and the people who would learn those skills and fill those jobs. And the way I found that area was because first I started a software development company as I was exiting law and found that we couldn't hire enough software developers. So my two co-founders decided, we got finding these individuals overseas or trying to build a team in a hybrid manner, they said, you know what, why don't we just train them? And the first software development bootcamp had just popped up in Canada, a short-term program to teach people how to be a software developer. And so with my colleagues, we started the second, and it has expanded. And now first was across the country when we were in person. And since the pandemic has been online and is even expanding, Lighthouse Labs is its name, expanding into the US and Australia and other places. And I couldn't be more excited about that, not just because I'm proud of the quality of the education that my co-founders have created. I left and have not been active for about 8 or 9 years now, but also because it taught me the impact that education can have on people's careers and the flexibility that is possible when you get outside of some of the more traditional post-secondary models. And I do want to compliment J-Tree and UTRGV in particular, because our work together, both on behalf of LinkedIn and more generally, has demonstrated how creative, how innovative, how outside of that normal bundle of services that post-secondaries unfortunately are sort of stuck in, UTRGV is. And so again, congrats. In terms of my career, I sort of want to progress from the lawyer to entrepreneur to intrapreneur bit, and speak specifically to that last intrapreneur piece, because as an example, that term doesn't necessarily mean something to everyone. And it is the flip side of an entrepreneur. If an entrepreneur is taking a business, creating a new business, I should say, and growing it, an intrapreneur is acting within an existing business, or in this case, I might even broaden that to system. It could be within an educational institution or even a government body, and changing how it works for the better, improving, in my case, I hope, how LinkedIn and Microsoft interact with the world, trying to bring a specific social impact lens to that, one of equity and inclusion, and one that starts with the public sector as a partner as opposed to a competitor. And I think the result over the past 7 or 8 years has really been a dramatic change in how both I interact with the actual leadership and silos within which I exist in LinkedIn and our parent company, Microsoft, but also how those organizations now interact with higher education systems, workforce development systems, even the idea of skills-based hiring, one of the most important ideas that I've been speaking about over the past couple of years, the idea that people should be hired based on what they know and what they have the potential to do in terms of skills, as opposed to what degree they have or who they know or what color their skin is or how they walk and talk. And I think that progression really has now hit sort of the mainstream, in part because LinkedIn adopted it, in part because so many other organizations have realized the potentially detrimental effects that focusing exclusively on years of experience, as an example, can have on those who aren't able to acquire those years of experience as easily. So that's the move, not just to being an entrepreneur, but also you can see it's the move from thinking about a lot of these issues as something that a small social impact team does within a big organization, thinking about how to sell as many licenses as possible, because to be clear, I am within LinkedIn's sales organization. I negotiate agreements with governments around workforce development, around how to get unemployed people jobs, but they're commercial agreements. And finally, move it to public-private partnerships. And you can hear already in that speaking and how I described UTRGV in particular, the last point on this slide, the importance of using technology not necessarily to fix things, right? This idea of solutionism, I think, is very, very true and unfortunate in terms of tech. We control technology. We have to use it. It is all about the humans leveraging this to create more positive change in the planet. And one of those changes is in higher ed, is in workforce development, where tech and the people who use it have the opportunity to reinvent a system that hasn't kept up with employment, that hasn't kept up with the needs that tech itself has created in terms of education and training and skills. Grateful if we could go to the next slide. So I'm going to try to run through these in about 3 minutes. But in short, folks probably know that at this point, all education has to happen in at least some hybrid manner. Some of it has to be online, some of it has to be in person. And one of the key lessons in working on a lot of online learning projects with post-secondaries, and maybe a key lesson for you as a learner as well, is that the ratio of how much is online versus how much is in person, maybe even how much is interactive and how much is solitary learning or what forms of learning you're doing, all of those ratios are on a spectrum. It's different for every person. My brother was way better at online learning. He would sit across the street while the lecture was happening and watch the lecture on his laptop. Whereas I can't do that. I need to be talking to somebody, to be interacting, to be like smelling their pheromones in order to learn the same way that my brother does. And so it's that difference in personality that I think is really important for both us as individuals as we learn to take into consideration, and educational institutions as well. We've talked a lot about public and private collaboration, and the main takeaway here is actually most well stated by a faculty member at the University of College London, who's running an institute on public-private partnerships. Her name is Mariana Mazzucato, and I've been following her writing really closely, in part because it defines a way for government and the private sector to work that is symbiotic instead of parasitic, wherein when the private sector, for instance, is selling into government, they are selling things that will leave government in the end stronger, a more powerful actor in that relationship, and more able to help their citizens or the residents where they work and operate, as opposed to what often happens where you have a consulting firm come in and then extract value from the public sector, or vice versa. So it really is, how do we build ecosystems that are mutually beneficial? And then I've already talked about the closing skills gaps more efficiently in terms of skills-based hiring, but there are many, many other means of closing skills gaps more efficiently than we currently are. And one of them, again, is something that UTRGV does quite well, which is start with labor market information. Start with what employers are saying they are looking for in terms of jobs, in terms of skills, and then build your curriculum for that. Build your career as an individual towards the kinds of employers and the kinds of roles that you're looking for, the kinds of industries that you hope might exist in the future and maybe don't even exist right now. Next slide, please. I think that might be it too. Oh, this is a fun one. I'm going to tell the story real quick, but when I was here in Toronto about 7 years ago, the first project we did with LinkedIn's data was around how to get folks who'd never had any post-secondary education into a job fast. And so we worked with a couple of community colleges and polytechnics nearby. We had the heads of the largest bank and the head of the police and a bunch of others. The mayor was there. Literally, the CEO of LinkedIn flew to Toronto to have this conversation. But these were the skills that we determined were necessary to teach somebody in a short amount of time to get them into a job. And my favorite stat from here is, if you look under number 4, there's Adobe Fireworks. I usually ask this as a question. What does anybody know what Adobe Fireworks is? Maybe I'll ask my co-panelists. Have any of you heard of Fireworks? No, I know. So the reason I ask is because it was, at this point, by far the most in-demand skill in Toronto. Thousands and thousands of people all around the city were just coding in Fireworks or using the software Fireworks. And Fireworks was used to make Flash, Adobe Flash, which the next year, right after we did this study, became obsolete. They turned it off on mobile. And so if you couldn't access any of the websites that these, around the world, millions of people, in Toronto alone, thousands of people were building, all of a sudden that skill became obsolete. And the point there is an indication of how quickly skills need to change. Jaitri, I saw you jump in.
Yes, I remember going through that challenge.
Of like, all of your websites were built in Flash and now they don't work. And so that is just a very clear example of how skills become obsolete, and how even our advice on this is what you should be creating a bootcamp on this year, the next year they had to create a bootcamp on a different subject. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is probably the single accomplishment I'm most proud of in my time at LinkedIn. And it's actually been duplicated in the workforce development area. And I apologize for the formatting on this slide. But in this case, we signed a public-private partnership, an agreement between LinkedIn and the government of Ontario, where I'm based, wherein 1 million students, faculty, and staff got access to LinkedIn Learning for free. And the result was they learned how to learn online. It wasn't necessarily that our content changed all of their lives, but rather, both from a teaching and a learning perspective, folks began to understand how to learn online well before a pandemic forced so many of us to do the same. Next slide, please. And what you can see here is, while I started out thinking about online learning, much of our work now actually relates as much to job matching, to workforce development focused on unemployed people, not just existing students, and really to a variety of other macro workforce and economic development challenges. In America right now, finding talent for jobs is at least as important as helping folks get the skills they need to get those jobs, because companies are desperate to put people in roles, which is doing really good things for your career opportunities. Take advantage of this time, take a breath, take your time when you're looking and applying for jobs, because there are way more jobs out there than there are people like you applying for them. And that puts you in a position of power when you're negotiating. And it should also give you some confidence in really choosing the career that you want, not just from a pay perspective, but also in terms of what you aspire to being as an individual, and in this society, what kind of world you want to build. Next slide, please. And so I think I've made a bit of the case for higher ed collaboration. I think in terms of workforce development, one of the things we need to see is more intersections between the two. And again, UTRGV is a fantastic example of workforce boards working hand in hand with post-secondaries. Starting with employers is obviously key. And we've talked a bit about growing the economy inclusively. I want to get rid of the slides and get on to actually having a conversation with my co-panelists, because I think they're more insightful than I am. But again, I'm grateful for you all having me and letting me present.
Thank you for joining us. Let's ask the co-panel members to see what kind of questions they have for you now. Anything. It doesn't have to be based on his presentation.
No, I think so. If I can, I definitely think one, like your experience, and I think my favorite thing that you kind of talked about is acknowledging the difference between the way things used to be as far as career traction and trajectory as the way it is today. I think about all the jobs I've had, the fact that I was a pre-med major and now I'm working in the construction industry. Like, you never know, where your career is going to take you. And so I think what I'd like to know is, with LinkedIn, and it sounds like the freedom and flexibility you've had there, what is, if you're going to bring a recommendation to students on how to navigate those waters around really not having a clear idea of where your career is going to go, but taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves, what is the advice you'd give around that?
So I think the ideal labor market would be a world in which people are matched to jobs not based on who they know, as I said, but rather based on their skills and potential. But practically speaking, we are never going to get away from networking as a means of both learning about and acquiring jobs. I think they say 80% of people right now get a job based on who they know. And as a result, I'm going to talk about the reality that we live in as opposed to the reality that I wished we lived in. And so to answer your question, the most fundamental thing I think in evaluating both your current career prospects and current industry or educational track that you're exploring, pathway that you're exploring, and potential future ones are what often are called coffee chats. Conversations, open-ended, not about a particular job, with as many people as possible. Everyone you should leave with one or two or three or five other people that individual can introduce you to. Everyone you should leave having offered that individual some information, some new insight, some experience that they value sufficiently that they'd want to have coffee with you again. And my easiest tip for how to actually get into those coffee conversations is to do the exact same thing. Research what they're working on, what they're excited about. It could be a hobby, and start the conversation with them, whether it's via a LinkedIn introduction request or connection request or just an email or a phone call or a text message, whatever it is. Start it by demonstrating that you know who they are, that you care about what they care about, and that you have something to offer them, as opposed to asking about a job or just asking to meet with them without further explanation. And if you can do all of those things, I think you'll be off to a great start. The last tip is, when you want to walk out of that conversation, make sure you thank them, and ideally follow up in a manner that makes it easy for them to help you. So as an example, if you're looking for introductions, write the introductions for them.
Oh, nice. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the question. Of course, absolutely.
Jake, I was very curious. So I wrote about this the other day. Information is becoming very prominent, so you can find information anywhere. And it used to be very scarce. So in your opinion, what have you seen LinkedIn do to help people sift through all of the information that we have at our fingertips?
Wow, that's a great question. My not off the record, but my personal opinion is not enough. I think that the balance between, as you said, narrow means of receiving information, 5 major national broadcasters or 3 major newspapers, or even just your local newspaper or family, and now like the entire planet's worth of information, that balance is skewed way too much towards too much information now. And I think you're right. A lot of the discontent in this planet, the polarization, the unhappiness is coming from the inability for us to respond appropriately, to adapt appropriately to technology. In some cases, like, we have built technology that outpaces our ability to control it. And it's not in the like generalized artificial intelligence sense. It's in the, all of a sudden, as you said, we can access infinite information, and our brains weren't made for that. So I do think there's a greater role, whether it's for LinkedIn or for a variety of other companies. I'm consulting to a startup called Readocracy, like reading and democracy combined, Readocracy. And what they do is they help you, as you're reading content, understand whether it is politically extreme or mainstream. And they use various nonprofits APIs to tell them that. They help you understand whether the content you're reading is substantive, like has in-depth analysis and is evidence-backed, or whether it's a listicle that is citing opinion. And I find that kind of real-time feedback is another great clue, in addition, of course, to the people that I trust, and looking at them as a means of seeking new information, because that often also can, of course, reinforce the echo chambers of sort of the people I know only being the ones that provide me with information. So having some of these other technological means of complementing the people that I trust, which I think LinkedIn does a good job of, right? Because LinkedIn is all about who you know. You get information from the people you know. And to the extent that you trust them, you're probably getting the best information from them that they're willing to share publicly, which is a bunch of criteria too, not all the information. But then again, I think having other tools to help us sift through this. So I'll give you another example that I like a lot. I've been saving things to Pocket. I think it used to be Read It Later. There's a bunch of these means of saving articles, etc., for 20 years now, since they were first created. And it's been incredible, both because in the given day, I'll open 40 links and only get to 2 of them. And then I really want to see, the one that I clicked on 18 clicks ago, but also because the information that is being sent to me tends to echo what those clicks are. So Pocket, for instance, now has its own, like, these are the articles we recommend based on what I'm clicking. And I intentionally then look at the opposite side of sources. It's that intentionality, that thoughtfulness about both the information we consume and the information we push out that I think might be lacking. And it's particularly lacking in terms of how we are building technology to then impact how we think, right? Like, it's companies like ours that need to take more responsibility to ensure that you and I don't have to figure out how to deal with being overwhelmed with information.
Thank you.
Of course, great question. Mai. I can't hear you yet, but I'll tell you when I can.
Awesome. Great questions so far. I had more of like a comment, and that led to a question, is that just on this right now, I didn't know you were from Toronto, Canada, because that's where I was from. And so this just shows, like, we're talking to people at the university in Texas. You're in Canada, I'm in Canada. That your geography does not limit you or matter, and it's not the first conversation. So on LinkedIn, when students are looking for new employment and they see the location, like how much importance or not, or how can they use their location or a vast one to their advantage?
Fantastic question. I think the pandemic has changed our reliance on location to a greater extent than almost anything else. There's many other trends that I wish we could seize on from the pandemic. Like, I spent a lot more time in nature with my dog as a result of not having to be on an airplane. And unfortunately, I'm already sliding back towards a life in airports and on planes, which obviously is also terrible for the environment. But I do think remote work is here to stay. There's all sorts of LinkedIn stats to show how much it's increased since the pandemic, during the pandemic, et cetera. But also on our platform now, for instance, you can actually put in, I am interested in remote work, or you can even say what other places you're interested in working in. You can just look for jobs that offer remote opportunities, et cetera. And I think it's that ability, not just that LinkedIn is creating, but rather that employers are creating, that will dramatically change how labor markets work and how you should do career development or search for a job.
So Jake, would you say it's hybrid or is it remote work that's back end?
That's a great question. I think most people are referring to what most people are referring to as remote work is, as you say, actually hybrid work. I will be in the office at least once this week and at least once every week that I possibly can when I'm working, because I feel the connections that are made there for me personally. As I said earlier, I work better in person. On the other hand, I think my brother may never go back to the office because he doesn't work as well in person, and his bosses might appreciate that because he literally just works better, is more efficient from home. And that efficiency question, I think, is another really important one, because never was I more certain that growth has as many downsides, and speed and growth have as many downsides as they do upsides, as I was during the pandemic. Because all of a sudden I was working 14-hour days instead of 7-hour days and taking 28 meetings instead of 6 meetings. And it's not like, sure, I am producing more. I'm a more productive person. The companies I work with are growing faster. The economy is growing faster, but I am a much less happy human being as a result as well. And I'm probably doing in some ways less meaningful, less thoughtful, perhaps even less creative or innovative things. So figuring out how to slow down, how to do less, I think for me is tied to in person as well.
Yeah, I think it seems like there's no clear cut separation between work and life. The work-life balance seems to have I guess become a little more diffused during the pandemic, because you just continue to work. I mean, because you're at your desk, it might be at your home, but I do want to be mindful of the time, and I know that you have an important meeting coming up, so I really thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
your feedback. Your presentation was invaluable. So have a
Pleasure.
great afternoon, and I'm sure
Thank
you'll
you.
catch up on what you missed later on YouTube. So
Sounds fantastic. I appreciate it. All right. Bye for now, all.
bye-bye. So at this time, let's go on with the discussion from the remainder of the discussion that our panel members will take you through. Let me go ahead and introduce them briefly as well before we get into that discussion. So let's start with Mr. Aaron Barrero. And some of you have seen him in our previous sessions of the speaker series and may recognize him right away. He has participated as a panel member before. Aaron Barrero believes he has a duty to make positive social impact in the world. LinkedIn provides a unique opportunity to bring people together and facilitate real change, which drives the content he creates on the platform. Mr. Barrero is also a proud vaquero as he graduated from our institution, University of Texas at Valley. Let me go ahead and introduce Cole Hayden at this point. And Cole, somehow it confuses me. So forgive me for doing that today, twice. Cole, he uses LinkedIn as a means to learn from people in completely different life situations than him, people who are different than him in demographics, seniority, education level, and have different worldview. His headlines on his LinkedIn profile reads, challenging others to think critically. This allows him to have fascinating conversations with people in the comment section of his posts and in private messages. Cole is a college student currently attending University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And then last but not least, let me go ahead and introduce Mai, who by her account had the picture perfect successful life. She graduated on Dean's List with a bachelor's degree in science, career progressions at her previous company, on the path to financial freedom, great friends, and family. But she felt incomplete. She didn't feel fulfilled. Through asking herself the tough questions, she created her own definition of what a successful, happy life is for her, and now motivates and inspires others to create their own definition, overcome mindset blocks, and create a life they love. So Mai, I believe you have a presentation. Let's get on with that before we get into the crux of the discussion today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. So my name is Mai. Some people might know me as Mai Yu. And as Cherie said, I went to school. I got great education, a pharmaceutical chemistry degree. So you see a photo of me at graduation. And still on that first slide. And then also another part of me off LinkedIn, you might see like I was also serving. I was a waitress. I worked in customer service at a coffee shop for 7 years. I had like more of the business forward in sales. And then I also just started posting like a photo a year ago, like, you know what, this is me in BC, like chilling on a rock. This is being me. And these were all posted on LinkedIn of who I was then. Moving to more of who I am now, and what I do on the next slide is I started showcasing like my story. So I wanted to have people on LinkedIn to say, hey, like, what is she doing? Like, I kind of want to do that, but maybe you never thought that somebody would resonate with you, that you thought maybe what you wanted was just what you wanted. You need to forget about it. So I just started showing like parts of my life to show that it is okay to be you and whatever that is. And just because somebody doesn't say it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So forward showing my story so you can be more confident and more proud of whatever it is you want and more encouraged to do that. So you see me working in the car, you'll see me rock climbing up the mountains, even emotionally crying on some videos, all these emotions. Moving on to the next slide. Wrapping up is taking on any big challenges and that you are not fixed to any type of location or career or anything. And that I showed my next chapter begins, or I did it. I moved from Toronto, Canada to now San Diego. And like Jake said previously, like you are not fixated based off your location. You can check remote work. You can check hybrid. You can check off other states or countries that maybe you want to work in. And showing that, which leads to the next slide, is that even just being on here, it just shows like you can do local inspiration, local changes, global impact. Never met any of these people in person. And that's the power of LinkedIn. So you can really just use that to as much as you want. You can even have palm trees backgrounds, and the energy and the smile and the value you'll give, it's going to be the same. So thank you for allowing me that time.
Thank you, Maya. That was very helpful. So what I'd like to do at this point is start with Aaron and share with us as to how he utilizes LinkedIn and leverages that platform and the tool to connect with like-minded people. That he does it on a daily basis. I know that because I see them on my live feed. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah. Thank you, Jayshree. So I've had the privilege to sort of go through different experiences. So a few years ago, I tried starting a business on my own and went through the steps and the motions and really struggled on doing it successfully. And eventually I had to leave that opportunity because it just wasn't working. I didn't have enough time, I didn't have enough resources, and it just became a struggle. And then other things in life were changing. And so fast forward to today, as I've come to know LinkedIn as a platform where you can quote unquote build in public, where you can interact and collaborate with people in a way that it helps you avoid a lot of the mistakes that comes with starting your own business, comes with starting your own venture, because people are there to support you and they want to see you succeed, because that's what the platform is all about. Everyone is going there for their own success and also to help others succeed. And so having realized that and being able to connect with people like Cole and a bunch of other people, I've had the opportunity to start taking the steps towards creating my own time freedom, financial freedom, and working towards a new business now, and with a lot more confidence of having my prior experience and knowing that I have a bunch of people around me that want to see me succeed and are going to be supporting me along the way. And so that's how I'm leveraging LinkedIn, and of course, just building a strong community of people that I've just been really privileged to meet and just develop friendships with, honestly.
Cole, why don't you share with us next? Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, so I joined LinkedIn back in 2019. I'm a student like a lot of you in the audience. I am currently 20 years old. Turned 21 later this summer. I started leveraging LinkedIn maybe 1 year ago, 18 months ago. And I can confidently say I wouldn't have all the work experience I have right now if I hadn't started using the platform. I started networking with alumni from my university, and that helped me get the first internship that I have on my resume. And then I leveraged that to get the one that I'm doing this summer. And I was able to meet some people who helped me schedule a part-time internship for this semester. So, as a college student, like internships are the pinnacle of work experience. That's what can set you up for your future and your career. And what I've found is that using LinkedIn is a fantastic way to get those. So actually, maybe 9 weeks ago, I think that's when I started posting. So I might have met Aaron maybe 7 weeks ago, and my posts were horrible. So the first post I wrote about was like, so a book that I read called Deep Work, and then the movie Kung Fu Panda. So I had made connections between the movie and how like Poe from the movie had to like engage in deep work to become the chosen one, or with the dragon warrior. So that was like my first post, and it wasn't great. I was literally texting friends, asking them to like go on LinkedIn and like my post. And now I don't have to do that. Like this morning, I just posted a question asking people like, what's your best money advice for a 20-year-old? And now I have tons of people from all over the world giving me advice that anyone else can come and read that advice and learn from. So as Jayshree said earlier in the intro, my headline reads like, I challenge others to critically think. So that it's very broad. Like everyone has thoughts every single day. And that allows me to create a community of people that's very diverse and like can share their stories. Like Mai can come on and share her stories. Everyone can learn from that. So just it builds a great community for myself to learn and gain knowledge, and everyone else to contribute their input.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Cole. This is very helpful. So let me get have all of you guys tell me about information. So Mai had a question earlier about information, right? So information being shared on LinkedIn, and my own observation of the platform, since I use it quite a bit, is that the coolest part about LinkedIn is that you have an idea to share, thought to share, or you want feedback from people. You get to shout out as loudly as you want to without disrupting anybody. You know what I'm saying? So through your words, you actually can express it however you want to, of course, without offending anyone. But at the same time, it could lead to engagement with thousands of people later on. And imagine being able to stand in front of an audience of 10,000 people. And that's when all of these things will hit you. Oh my gosh, I'm being judged by 10,000 people. But when you post something on LinkedIn or share a video, whatever, you really have no clue how many people it's going to reach. But at the same time, you have the advantage of reaching that many people without having to go through all of those anxiety causing, nerve-wracking emotions that you go through when you actually stand in front of 10,000 people and talk. For example, one of our previous sessions, has had 10,000 views. You would never have imagined that that's what the reach would be, but that many people across the globe have actually heard us and heard you guys. And this is the beauty of LinkedIn, because then it really puts you in front of other professionals that are like-minded or have interest in the topics that you have either insights about or are curious about. Mai, you want to share anything?
Yeah, I completely agree. And what I loved about this part is that, as like someone who, like Cole said, like you just posted, you didn't know if someone would see it, maybe they didn't like it, but you do make such an impact. And me being on here, some people will know me only as Mayu. They didn't know when I started going by Mai.
Yeah.
And I had someone comment who was a senior when I was an internship 9 years ago saying, "Love your new groove." And I had no idea he had read any of them, but it showed that he was following for a while, that he was a supporter. So that even if you post something at the very beginning, like Cole mentioned, you might not see the data stuff on there, but you'll feel it. And how Jake mentioned earlier that it's not just about like the stats and all that stuff anymore, but it's like how you feel, how it will come to your advantage. It's not always statistic. And I'm just really, really excited for all you guys. It's such a great time right now.
And look at this. I mean, because I got to know you guys after the first session that I did with Aaron, some of you started adding me. So obviously I started seeing what you're doing on LinkedIn. That led me to think that, you know what, I should invite them as panel members for this. So this is how the network grows. This is how you begin to benefit. This is how the world begins to benefit from that. And so what I wanted to do today, I know we're still talking, but whoever's watching right now, we want to give them an opportunity to join the panel live. If any of our student employees that are on the call right now on YouTube, feel free to click on that link that you just saw and join us live. In the meantime, we'll just keep talking as well. Cool. Because this pilot that we're running and the speaker series was primarily to benefit our students that are currently attending our university, what are some of your advice to them? I know you shared some of that, what you've done, right? So in terms of people who have not been on LinkedIn yet, but as part of this project, we're also asking them to set up their LinkedIn profile and begin to add their LinkedIn learning badges so that it'll help them build their profile and also build value to their profile. What is your advice to them if they haven't set up the profile yet?
Yeah, it's a great
or
question.
just create the profile, either way.
Yeah, so well, first off, you want to build your profile. So the basic things, like you want your profile picture, you want a headline, and then you want to add all your experiences in there. And once you build that out, that's when you can start leveraging the value of LinkedIn. So I wouldn't suggest posting at first, because I think that can be just throwing yourself in the deep end, and then you might get worried and then just be like, no, I'm not doing this, and then you stop doing it. So I would suggest what I did is I started to use like direct messages or private messages, whatever you want to call it, and reach out to people in your communities. So whichever university you go to, or whichever work experiences you've had, find people in that community that you'd like to talk to. So Jake mentioned the coffee chats earlier. Find people like someone like Aaron, an alumni of your university. Reach out to them and ask like, "Hey, this is who I am. I'm very curious in what you're doing. Could I have like 10 minutes of your time?" Normally, the 10 minutes will turn into 30 or longer, but yeah. So you just ask for like 10 minutes, and once you learn how to use the private messages on LinkedIn, you'll get more accustomed to it, and it'll become more comfortable. And if you can do this earlier in your undergraduate career, like when you're an underclassman, by the time you're an upperclassman, it will be like second nature. You'll just start doing it because you'll see the value in it. Um, I know a lot of people on LinkedIn, their messages are just blank, and they don't really see a reason to use it, and they don't think that others use it. But in reality, there are a lot of people and a lot of professionals that leverage that to get jobs and to build a career for themselves. So yeah, my top advice for undergraduates is, first off, build your profile, and the best way to do that is to look at other people who have built their profile, your peers or people maybe 2-3 years ahead of you. Analyze their profile, figure out what you like, and then emulate that on your own. Then learn how to use the private messages, and then once you get comfortable with the platform, that's when you can start posting, and then that's when it snowballs and things start to get crazy.
Let me ask all three of you again, what are some don'ts on LinkedIn? Let's talk about that. From your own experiences, lessons learned.
For me, I would say do not get attached to the outcome. That if I post, then I'll get likes. Because now if you don't get as many likes as you want, you feel like you lost and that it's not a win. And instead, like, like if I post, then I can check that off. That was my goal, that I wanted to do that, and I did do that. And whatever value it gained or I did not, it's okay because I checked off that I wanted to post something. And then something that I wanted to just take on to what Cole was saying is that those messages, it's like a text. It's like an email. And you're also practicing your soft skills that Jay Cherie said that was so important right now. Absolutely. So imagine baby text meets emails, and that's exactly how it starts off.
Yes, good point, good point. How about the others?
Yeah, I think I would definitely say like don't be desperate, right? Like a lot of times when we are in an environment where we want to network, like we feel like it's us against everyone else, and we need to do anything we can to try and get in front of somebody. And it's like they say, like eventually, if any of you start to do sales, you'll learn like anyone who's desperate trying to do sales, it's a difficult way to sell because people can sense that. And so when you're on LinkedIn, what you want to do is you want to be confident in your voice, what you have to share, what you have to bring to the conversation, because no one's ever going to have that. And when you can understand that, when you can be confident in that, and you connect with people based on that confidence in who you are, and then a genuine curiosity to say, okay, now I want to take this and build a community with people and learn from others, not because you want to benefit, just because you genuinely care. That's going to lead to a lot more success, as opposed to like, oh man, I want to connect with this person and I'm just going to send a random invitation and hope it goes through. Like if you spend a lot of time doing that, you're going to get the sense that the platform doesn't work for you, when that's not the case. You just have to spend a little time showing people who you are, showing that you're willing to contribute, and then things are going to, like Cole said, just snowball from there.
Yeah,
good point. Cole?
I have 3 don'ts that I wrote down for you guys. So
I saw you writing down some things. Go ahead.
So one, like when you first get on LinkedIn, it'll be tempting because you want to get the 500 plus connections. So it's completely fine to just like connect with a ton of people at your university or at your job. But down the road, you're not going to want to do that. You're not going to want to just click on the My Network and then just like spam connect to try and get your numbers up, because at the end of the day, it's quality over quantity. So you want people that are going to provide value to you. So that's don't number 1. Don't like spam connect too much. Don't number 2 is don't be someone that you aren't. So it's kind of cliche advice, but it's not sustainable. So if you try and bring up like an image of yourself that's not true, you're not going to be able to continue to do that for the next 5, 10 years. So it's gonna run out at some point. So I'm just a very inherently curious person. So that's what I'm trying to build my personal brand as, someone who just wants other people to show their stories and show their curiosity so that I can, learn from them. And then the third one is, don't think everyone has your best interests in mind. Um, Ever since I started posting on LinkedIn, a lot of people will reach out to you. And if you're a student looking for jobs, people will reach out to you. Uh, don't think everyone has your best interest in mind, because then you could become a victim of someone who has an agenda with reaching out to you. So make sure that if someone's reaching out to you with an opportunity, talk to someone that you trust, like Jay Shree or Aaron or Mai, and ask them, hey, like, what's your opinion on this opportunity? Do you think that this is legit? Um, I post about money a lot, so pyramid schemes reach out to me, and my radar for that is like crazy now. So yeah, just remember, not everyone has your best interest in mind.
That is such an excellent point, Cole. I couldn't have stressed it better. My piece of advice to young people who are joining LinkedIn or establishing their presence on LinkedIn, remember that LinkedIn is a social network for the professionals. So let's keep our personal side to other platforms. There are plenty of other platforms where you can share a lot of your personal stories. Personal in the sense, what I'm talking about is breakups and whatever other emotional stuff that you go through in your personal life. That shouldn't make that shouldn't become part of your profile unless you are headed in that direction in terms of being someone who is who has the goals to become an emotional support for people or other types of in a strict professional world. You really have to kind of keep in mind that whatever you share, post on LinkedIn will remain there. Yes, you might be able to delete some of them, but at the same time, it just becomes part of the digital footprint for you, right? So keep that in mind. Don't be a part of the problem, but be a part of the solution. So make sure that you choose your posts and responses very judiciously, because you really want to spread good information and not bad information, because information has its own benefits and value as long as it's information that's useful to other people. So be mindful of that, and take all of the advice that our panel members have shared today, because they are experiencing and experimenting and learning from their mistakes as well. And some of those don'ts that each one of you shared is extremely valuable. So today we really wanted to give I had announced the last session, if you recall, that we would be giving our live audience an opportunity to join you all live, but we posted the link there, but it seems like people are not really taking that opportunity. What would you all say to a student that's watching you today to encourage them to join you right now?
You can type it if that's something you feel more comfortable with. Like, we're all very welcoming, and like Cole said, be yourself. And especially that third point where like we're all coming from a place like we want to help you. I hope you feel that you can trust us. And even if you don't feel comfortable now, just send us a message later on. Like, it's such a community. And I'm really hoping that you guys got value, although we can't quite see it right now. And again, it's, that feeling versus you writing that stat or the fact back that, yes, I got value.
Yes. So in case they don't take advantage of that, we are coming up on the hour soon. So I do want to take a moment to thank each one of you for joining us today. And the discussion was valuable. And I'm pretty sure that I myself will be going back and listening to it later on, just to see if there are things that I missed. So all of this will just become part of the I guess digital footprints in some ways, like I said before. And even if one person benefits from listening to each of you today, to me that my goal is accomplished. So today's session is also the last session of our series. So it's a bittersweet moment for me, because I've enjoyed having these discussions with you all and sharing some important valuable feedback on how to leverage LinkedIn and how to build a really strong professional community. And I know that each one of you is doing exceptionally well in terms of what you want to accomplish from LinkedIn. And you all are great role models. So thank you all for joining us today. And with that, I think I guess people are just posting saying really enjoyed the series. So that's good.
If I may,
Yes.
Jay, one
Go
thing
ahead.
I would like to add on to the last comment you made. I think that I think I agree with you on how you approach being emotional on the platform. I will say that, like, and I'd be remiss to say that not to be emotional, just not to do it, is something that even LinkedIn is trying to move towards away from. And so there's this hashtag called I am a professional, which is trying to redefine what it means to be a professional. And so I think when it comes to talking about emotional posts on LinkedIn, it's not about venting per se, it's about understanding that what you contribute on the platform should be something that brings value to others. And so that's what you want to focus on when you share an emotional post, is like, I came through from this and I learned this and it's helped me become better. Because ultimately, like, and I've said this in some of my content that I've shared, what the most of like how we perform as professionals is going to be always tied to the difficulties we face personally. And so if you can demonstrate your abilities to overcome personal challenges in your life, that's going to speak volumes of how you respond as a professional as well. And so I think LinkedIn is very prominent on trying to balance that conversation. But like you said, you don't want to be instigating a problem. You want to always be contributing to a solution. And so I just wanted to share that. And
No, it's a very valuable point, Aaron. Thank you for sharing that. So one thing that I wanted to share, the main reason that I mentioned that is because you really, it's a thin line that you are walking when you do that. So one has to be mindful about how they come across and how they're bringing that information out. We're all human beings. We all have different aspects to our personal and professional life. And sometimes what happens in a professional life kind of, filters over into your personal life and vice versa, right? So we're all continuously evolving, and we are breathing and experiencing and going through the emotions, so there's no questions about that. But as part of the discussion today, we also talked about how you start off with a profession in mind, right? And so a lot of your posts are related to what you have in mind today, but 5 years from now you might see a completely different opportunity in the direction that you want to head in your career. So what you have to be mindful of today is the fact that your career could pivot in a different direction. If that happens, some of your posts today could be contradictory to what you do later, right? So that's something one has to be mindful about. Other than that, I think most of the people in the generations that are in our panel members today, they're doing exceptionally well on LinkedIn. I keep an eye, and there's some really good information that's being shared through the membership, through the connections, and it's amazing how some of those discussions or communications or online debates, if you say, on LinkedIn that are happening become a trigger to some important thoughts in your head as well. So on a daily basis, it's almost like LinkedIn gives you a little think pill. You know what I'm saying? So I would highly recommend all of our student employees that are part of this project to get themselves started on LinkedIn if they haven't already, or if they have a profile, to begin to really utilize it well by connecting with people, like-minded people on LinkedIn. And the panel members today, I'm sure they'll receive a few connections today after this. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today. And again, thank you all for joining us. Thank everyone that's watching it live as well. But this will be there on our YouTube channel for anyone to watch later and comment as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all so much.
Bye, everyone.
bye.